So thanks so much. We had a really interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the similarities and differences were with the other room. And so I think the starting point for our discussion was the fact that the need for cell has never been greater. That this is a situation where we're expecting, where young people are going to need to show unprecedented resilience in order to cope with what's going on. But that comes at the same time as a time when the opportunities to develop cell have been dramatically reduced. We talked about the fact that
I'm really sorry to interrupt you. Would you just say that last bit again? Your audio went out slightly there.
Sure. Yeah, I was just saying that we're combining a time when the need is greater with a time when the opportunities for developing cell have been dramatically reduced. The interactions themselves and even school attendance itself are crucial elements of developing cell, and those are gone. So I think Alex started off with giving us a kind of different phases with currently coping with the current circumstances, recovering from the current circumstances, and then the opportunity for reform, which ties into Sharaf's point right at the start about, is this a chance for us to leapfrog and to be better and stronger? But the challenge with that being that we're going to be moving into a time when there's a lot of pressure to catch up, which is going to be squeezing things and therefore potentially reducing the opportunities for some of the richer interactions that are needed to develop cell. So that's kind of the horizon we're looking at. I think an overarching theme then in the next stage was around content, and the question that the fact that in general, we can look at what's going on at the moment and think, okay, we need to find new ways of pushing out content. But actually, that's not what developing cell is necessarily about. Really. The relationships and interactions are key. And so it's not just about moving content online. So whilst there is really good practice going on in terms of moving great content online, whether that be podcasts, WhatsApp, use of radio adverts and so on, that we're not talking just about putting on a 30-minute unit of learning. So we shouldn't be just thinking about content-based activity. We need to be thinking about how we develop motivation and persistence and so on to be able to engage in learning in this new kind of way. And Joyce gave us some examples of how that might mean drawing on behavioural insights work, and thinking about different types of technology for how technology can develop that kind of motivation to maintain engagement. But also it's about interactions, and therefore it's about role modelling. So tying back into that initial question of teachers and parents as role models, got this real triangle of interactions between the school, the pupil and the parent, and all of those interactions are being recalibrated. So in fact, in many ways, schools and teachers are interacting with parents and pupils in new ways, which actually might provide some new opportunities. So finally, the kind of ideas we closed with, we thought about whether this actually might be an opportunity to upskill young people to be more independent and to learn online in ways that perhaps they haven't done in the past. We talked about the fact that Jane pointed out there is a lot of stuff out there, and it's not necessarily a need for new stuff. It's about mobilizing the good stuff that's out there, but developing some coherence to that. And there was some discussion about what kind of levers there might be to increase the role of social and emotional learning, whether that was about developing assessments, because those can often be an incentive to doing things, but also simple, softer pushes like common language, and also changing the way funding works in order to reward or incentivize social and emotional learning. But finally, we closed with an acknowledgement that we need to acknowledge what can and can't be done online, and not to think that everything can be done online. So we need to think about what are the elements of cell at the moment that we can really foster and nurture, despite being online, without thinking we can do all of it, so that we can then plan for those other elements later.
Thank you, Loic. Ellie, I'm conscious there may have been some overlap between the two groups, but was there anything that you will add in terms of what came out of your discussion?
Yeah, for sure. So apologies for everybody in our group. We did a little summing up at the end, so they're perhaps going to feel like I'm repeating myself somewhat. but I'll go ahead for the people that were in your group, Will. So as you said, there was quite a lot of overlap in terms of thinking about how the need has never been greater, but there's also a real opportunity. We talked quite a lot around the push-pull between the opportunity for a reset and putting SEL high on the agenda, as everybody in the group has always wanted it to be, and that looked quite positive initially. But the feeling of the group was there's quite a few indications that, particularly in the UK, but generally, governments are perhaps moving back to a position of wanting to pull back or return to the norm. So we talked about that tension quite a lot. One of the key things that I think you've touched on, Eloy, but we talked about in more detail, was around the people that are actually involved, because obviously if we're talking about something being delivered or developed or helping people, it's actually people and communities that are at the heart of that. So Tom talked about employers and their role in this, and the fact that they would need, that they were talking about needing more SEL skills from the people that they employed, because in the future, in a post-COVID world, be that sort of when we hopefully have a vaccine and moving on, but more likely actually living with the degree of risk, employers will want people who are flexible, adaptable, problem solving, and able to kind of adapt to a rapidly changing world and really big challenges. And then we also talked about how frameworks for supporting young people's SEL need to involve wider communities. And we had a really strong point about the fact that if we want to see really big change and a lot of support going to young people that have had really difficult experiences recently on a school level, then it will be staff that will need to deliver that. And it's really important to think about staff's well-being and how they're also going to be supported. And John also made the good point that parents need to be heavily involved in that. So a general sort of sense of the community around the child coming closer together. We had some really interesting discussions about different cultures and what they can teach us about the sort of like different priority, the way that different countries or different cultures prioritize SEL differently or think about it differently in terms of what they want young people to do. So that was really interesting in our discussions. And a common theme that was running throughout when we were talking about how it would be delivered or what exactly it was that we wanted young people to learn was around agency and the confidence for young people to lead with their own experiences. So there was a general consensus that good social and emotional learning was about doing things with young people, with children, with pupils, with the whole community, with staff in schools, rather than doing something to them. So really the approaches that we want to be learning from are not those that sort of put something in place and put that on young people. It's something that starts with their experiences, teaches them to use their voice and builds from there. So hopefully that was a good summary of all the amazing points that are made, but I'm really looking forward to you listening back to that, Will, because it was a brilliant conversation. So thanks everybody in our group.
Great, well thank you for that summary. And we're coming to the end, so it falls to me to say thank you to everyone. And when we first talked about holding today's session, it was back last autumn, I think. It was certainly before Christmas. And so we talked today about uncertainty, and certainly we've had to we're having this conversation in a very different context of the one we expected to be having it in. So it's really, really appreciated that you've all come and spoken and contributed at a time when we probably need it more than we realized we were going to need it. So hopefully this has really revealed just how essential these topics are. And we will now, take this content, take all these wise thoughts that you've provided with us with, and think about where we take them from here. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back in touch about next steps as soon as possible. So thank you.